Welcome back to the TheChopShop Search Arb podcast episode number 2. Today we'll be chatting about competitive research. Because whether you're just starting out with search arbitrage or you already are a seasoned veteran, there is no way around competitive research. You have to know what your competition is doing and ensure that you are setting the benchmark at least as high as them. In order to do that, you have to find your competition in the spy tools or in the Facebook ad library, and then closely study what kind of ads they are launching and in what verticals they are active. In this episode, we are going to show you how to do that and what pitfalls to avoid. If this is a topic that interests you, remember to hit subscribe and like to ensure that you're not missing out on any of our future content. All right, here we go. Enjoy. How to do competitive research on Meta. I think it's very important for people that want to get started to make sure to look at someone that has had success in the field. When I've coached media buyers in the past, I see there's a common error to want to invent something new when you do search, or you want to show like, oh, that you have a new idea, a clever idea. And I find myself trying to stop new campaign managers from doing that. I'm telling you, you're not here to invent something, you're here to make money. And in order to make money, you'll be much faster if you look at someone that has had success in the past and make sure that at least in the beginning, you try to emulate that. How's your experience?
Yeah, a mixture, I think, of what you've said, doing a lot of competitive research, especially if it's a vertical that's been around for a long time. It's important to see what are the biggest creatives often in the ads tools, ads library, or other spy tools. You can filter through and see for an existing vertical, one that's been around for a couple of years, why is something performing really well? What is the what is the angle? What's the headline? Yeah. If it's a video, what are they saying? What is the hook? That can really establish a strong foundation for building your own creative. And what is the user? Why are they responding to this creative? And then from there, it's healthy to balance still an encouragement of testing to be able to say, because internally for us, we have a very strong content team, a lot of creative people that are coming up with different angles, but it doesn't work unless they have a baseline where you could suggest this is an angle that's working really well and point them in a certain direction. So we're not copying per se, but rather just giving them sort of the intent of what the user might respond to. And then they create their own organic video or static image combined with the headline. Beyond that, there's only so much you can do by looking at the ads library. You have to test a lot. And even if you know all the ingredients for the best creative, it really still comes down to testing it in your own way with your own version. If it's taking some inspiration from that original creative or an entirely new style, testing it a lot, that's the key. The other side of that equation is like giving it enough traffic, testing different headline combinations to see if you can find that incremental performance for what you've just made.
If we have any listeners that are not familiar with the ads library, let's just really quick describe how to find it. The beginning is you gotta know of a page that does some quality arbitrage. Right? And once you know that, you can find, you just go to that page on Facebook. I would suggest here as a tip, if someone wants to follow along, just to type in health verse. That's a page run by a very established company that buys a lot of traffic. And I emphasize buys a lot of traffic because if you look at someone, if you want to take inspiration from someone, there's a lot of dangerous actors to take inspiration from, because it's super tempting to go very aggressive and to, like, for a short time have success, and you don't want to copy that and then also go down in flames when someone has been too aggressive. So Health First is a good example of someone, like a page that's been in the business for a long time, and they drive traffic in large volumes and they are compliant, right? And here I also want to emphasize, make sure that you really know the compliance rules, because of course you need to be boundaries. You don't want to overstep. That could end your career as an arbitrager rather quickly. You will lose your reputation with the monetization services, you're risking clawback. So make sure that you know the rules. And when you see people breaking the rules, you don't necessarily copy that, evidently. But okay, once you type in Health First, then you go to the About section. They've hit the ad library a little bit now. Then in the About section, there's a section called Page Transparency. And then you need to click See All in that section. And then the button for the ads library shows up. And so there you see all the ads that have been launched in under this page's name and when they have been launched. And so the first thing that I would recommend doing, if you go in there with a total, like, blank mind, I would look at what have they launched recently, but I would also look at what have they launched in the past that's still active, and then make mental notes of what kind of verticals are they launching. And then obviously if there's a vertical that keeps on repeating and there's a lot of ads in that vertical category, that's a signal that it seems to be working for them. And also old ads that are still active could also be a signal that this is an ad that has been working really well. So you have to combine several things. Additionally, you can see what platforms the ads are being run at. Really try to look at, like, all the details that are being offered to you there, because something might work just on Instagram and not that well on Facebook. Am I forgetting anything? Something else at this level?
No, I think you've covered most of it.
Yeah. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I find that especially when someone is new, tell them stick very closely to the vibe in the ad and, like, the feeling in the image and so on, that many people struggle with that they are almost too creative. There's a thing, like, you cannot copy one-to-one what someone else is running. You can do it, but it's not a good practice. I wouldn't recommend it. But you can be very inspired by what someone is running, still make it your own. But I would really emphasize to be mindful of that. The tone is the same, the imagery is similar, maybe even the colors are similar, so that you have that baseline that you mentioned. Because if you deviate too much from what is being run and that ad runs poorly, then you don't know, you need a signal of a similar ad that's running. And of course, then your aim should be to create other ads that are a little bit more enticing, right? They should at least reach up to that benchmark ad that you've launched.
It's good to note that when you're looking at these ads, it's like you mentioned earlier, like having the perspective of where it's being run. You see the information in the ads library, but there's also still a lot of information that's not there, such as the placements. Is it on Facebook feed or Instagram? The style of the video is very different for one versus the other. You might see a video or a static image that seems to have been around for a long time, but if you're not running it in the right place, your inspired version of it, that's where the testing really comes into play. There's a lot of variables on the campaign settings and targeting that still need to come into play. But yeah, it's a really good place to establish a new media buyer, because it helps them see, of course, as they're being onboarded, they're looking at what we're doing, what are the creatives that we're running and how are we assembling them. But it's helpful also to see what other people are doing to get like a full perspective on what makes other people's ads work well. And yeah, I think it's a great place to start. And with what you mentioned earlier about the compliance, finding the biggest pages is usually a good start because they've been around for a long time. And in order to have done so, they had to run very compliantly. You don't want to establish a new media buyer on the foundation of a bad page where people are very aggressive and using imagery that's not compliant. It's important, like when the education process is happening, that they're following the best examples, the best players in the space
100%.
with the best compliance controls so that they're not starting out with flawed perspectives and strategies with regards to creatives.
Yeah, there's this balance that you're trying to find, that the ad is still convincing as it can be while being compliant, right? And it can be a matter of just adding a word. Like for instance, it's may, like adding a may surprise you or something like that. It's very important when you launch ads that you generally, it's really simple if you think about it. You're not allowed to lie, right? So you shouldn't promise anything that's not true. But like writing, these prices will surprise you already, that's not true because I can't guarantee that the recipient will be surprised by a certain price. So add a may, right? There's a lot of words, and so you'll get into it as you progress as a media buyer. But yeah, so I would recommend screenshotting the ads so you have it, because ads tend to disappear after a while, and it's good for you to have a memory of like, where was my mind at, or what was the inspiration for this kind of campaign? How did it all start? So I recommend taking a screenshot, not only of the ad, but then also clicking through is very important so that you're aware, like, how does the flow go? Sometimes it goes directly to the park page, sometimes it goes to the interstitial. And if it goes to content page or interstitial, then that's also super important, because you should visualize that as a chain. The whole chain needs to fit from the ad to the content page and to the park page with the keywords that are on there. That is when the promise that you made in the ad, that it's congruent with what's being talked about on the content page, and then what kind of keywords are being displayed on the park page. You don't want to shock people or promise something in the ad and then do like a bait and switch when it comes to the park page. That's not a good practice. So it's not enough just to look at the creative, understand the whole flow and see, does it make sense? Is it nice? Is it tight? The whole concept, and write down the keywords or screenshot.
Sorry.
Very important.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make when they're going through Ads Library and they find a creative that is strong, that they feel like they can build their own versions of it. They don't look at what comes beyond that, whether it be an interstitial or the park page or the SERP page, and what kind of keywords are being passed. Like you said, it needs to transition really well. And you can have a really aggressive creative targeting a specific angle, but when the users land on the park page and the keywords are totally different, I'm thinking of the old days where you would have like speaking of health-based creatives, where you're asking someone about the symptoms of a certain condition that they might have, and then they land on the park page or the interstitial and it's talking about medications and treatments and whatnot. It's not exactly a clean transition like we would see if you used the proper keywords, symptom-based keywords, that the conversion rate would almost double, because that is what the user saw when they first saw the ad, or what they were told in the video. Do you have this symptom? If so, potentially it might be X, Y, and Z. So then on the next page, when they click, they're expecting to find more information about the symptom, not treatments, because they haven't been diagnosed with anything. So it's important to have that transition into the the intent of why the user clicked in the first place to showing the right keywords that would get them to continue clicking. It's not enough that you have a strong ad. You also have to have a high, of course, conversion rate on the keyword side. So the two are very intertwined.
100%, yeah. Yeah, I remember this was a long time ago. It ran France SUVs on native, and one of the media buyers put out an ad like that said something like, "This SUV is so big it takes up 2 parking spots." And for some reason, like people clicked this ad like crazy because I guess they were upset about large SUVs taking up parking space in France. But that converted terribly.
Yeah.
So in the first layer, it looks like when you just look on the buy side, it's an amazing ad. People click like crazy, but you have to make money as well, obviously. So that's the art of it, to balance that it's like clickable, but by the right people with the right intent, of course. So yeah, there's a lot to be gained from studying the ad library, like not only the creatives, but also the content page. And there I would also recommend, if you're building it, make sure that you know what the masters, so to say, out there, how they do their content pages, and make sure to test it, to include in your A/B testing. So you also there have a benchmark for what is good. And here again, pay a lot of attention to the details. Reload the page a few times at different, maybe even at different times at different days, and note like which link is on the top. Generally people click in the top position of the keyword block there on the page. So that gives you a signal also what kind of content in the buttons is the desirable one, and make sure to keep it tight then. And also, again, like that the ad needs to match with the keywords. Of course, the keywords displayed on the content page need to match the keywords on the park page. Be very aware of, is there a disconnect happening in what you're promising? Optimally, you want everything, I say it again, to be super connected, but you will come across examples where there's a disconnect. And it can make sense sometimes if these keywords are being very highly paid. So you consciously accept the lower CTR because the RPCs are so high for certain keywords. It can work, but you should be aware of that. Then you're moving into a gray zone. Your campaign is not like a squeaky clean
Yeah, I would say
and
with interstitials, it's an even
optimal
more
campaign.
important exercise to really have that strong transition. Like you said, with the keyword blocks there are important, but also you have the added layer of content and the headline for that content as well on the interstitial page. If you have a video describing an SUV, and then on the second page, you have a photo and a headline about a sedan or something, then that's not going to be a good transition. Even if lots and lots of people are clicking on the ad, it won't transition well onto that next step.
Yeah. Oh, and then another thing that I wanted to highlight, when you look at ad library, be aware of what parts are vertical specific and what parts you might be able to use in other verticals. There's elements in copywriting that are just, they communicate value without being connected to a certain vertical. Like back in the days, I used to like looking at the penny hoarders Facebook page, even though I didn't launch so many of those verticals, but I found that they were doing really well with their imagery, and they were doing really well with their copywriting, and they had a lot of elements that are very generic. So they used to have an ad text that just said, "I wish I would have known this sooner," for instance. That you can apply to almost any kind of vertical.
I think that's a really good point, and something we haven't mentioned so far is
valuable.
that as you're doing this research, it's not,
from, for instance.
Of course, it's helpful to start with others that are already doing the arbitrage, but where we found a lot of inspiration is not from that, but rather other large pages that are doing other forms of online traffic, but they still have strong ads. And so it's helpful to see in a vertical who are the biggest buyers of your traffic, and then see what they themselves are running in the ads library. What are the hooks that they're using for their SUV ads? For instance, like a Ford or a Mercedes, if they're buying traffic, like what do their ads look like? So you can have and complete that circle of having a seamless transition from your ad to the keyword to eventually their ad. So with your example with the penny hoarder, I think that's a great one because even though they're not in the same space, they're not driving traffic the same style of page, they're also in the exercise of creating strong ads with high CTRs. So seeing what the hooks are in the headline, what are they testing, that's all information that could be transferred into your own media buying. It doesn't have to be search our pages. It could be anyone.
Yeah. And then when you zoom out from just trying to launch an ad in a specific vertical, if you just look at who are you as a media buyer, like when you're getting started, I find many people, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, they're like trying to hop into the role of like some form of Einstein, that you try to like invent something new. That's not your role. I would say your role is very easy. Your role is to make money, and you make money by making intelligent tests quickly, and you'll be much quicker if you have a template already for what is working. And you could also view yourself more maybe like a DJ. You mix together elements that work and thereby creating ads that still are unique, but they build on the wisdom or the experience of people that have been in the field longer than you. Then I'd say you have a higher chance for success if you have this kind of framework in your mind when you go out there and build your campaigns and look at your competition. Oh, and then I also wanted to say, when you then find, like when you go to the end of the flow, make sure also to reload the lander and note, are the keywords the same all the time, or do they rotate? And that could be done. Make sure you have the right VPN active. If you have a US-based campaign and you're not in the US, you might not see the right keywords. And then if you see a variety of keywords, write them down and then make sure to test all of them. And also I make a note there also, again, which ones show up at the top, because if it's an intelligent setup with the keywords, of course, the best ones will show up in the first position. We had now it's many years ago, but we had a dude from Mexico, a very clever dude, that did like a very scientifically proper test of where do people click depending on the position, regardless of the content. It was always the same. The vast majority click on position number 1, and then less people on position number 2, etc. So make sure that you put your best keywords in the best positions, or at least test them in different positions to really find out how they perform. Good. Yeah, now we had a lot of elements that are not meta specific, but that's fine, right? It needs to be said.
I think it's always a good place to start with the ads library, because
kind of framework
it gives you a lot
at least we've had
of history as well. Like you said earlier, if someone's been running an ad for a long time, Meta kind of breaks that out when it was launched. And if it's been running for a long time, chances are it's been performing. So starting there and seeing what are the building blocks for a vertical, because like when you're starting a vertical as a media buyer, it's really important to do as much research, like going to your earlier point, as possible, to look everywhere. Search, are people running that vertical? Other advertisers in that same vertical? What are the elements that you can see across all these advertisers in that space? And then you can start to see a pattern. What are the keywords that a lot of people are using? Testing the keywords is probably the most underrated thing in our organization as well. Really pushing people to constantly tinker with the keyword mix and seeing if a keyword has stopped performing. That doesn't mean the vertical has stopped performing. Perhaps the budget has run out. Having a nice pool as you're doing your research of keywords that you can rotate in. Just because this is the best keyword this month doesn't mean it's going to be the best one next month. Refreshing your knowledge on what kind of keywords are people rotating in, that's an ongoing process that doesn't stop once you've learned about the creative side. It's something that should continue on for as long as you're running that vertical, so that you're always putting the most relevant keywords and you're always testing.
That's a great point. So it also underscores the importance not only to save the creative, but also save the URL of the content page or part page if it's direct, so that you can check back later. If you see poor performance, then one of the first things you should do is to check, have they upped their game? Maybe have they started running a different kind of keyword? But that builds on that you look at a really good buyer of traffic. If you look at the poor
Yes.
one, chances are that they don't do everything properly. So it's very, all this builds on that you have a good role model to look at. Absolutely. And then also the ad library thing, it shouldn't be that you just do it once and then you relax. It should be part as a media buyer of your weekly routine, to just quickly check in on your inspirational sources. What are they doing now? If you should have a feeling for that, so that you can see if they change up the creatives of the verticals that are running. Maybe you should also give that a try. And that I find many people tend to do research in bursts, and then they get caught up with just managing their campaigns and they forget to check what's out there, and they become a bit myopic about like just managing their own stuff. It's important that you give the campaign like fresh ideas, fresh lifeblood, so to say, with inspiration from the outside. So when you have a campaign that works, you should of course look a lot at internally, like what's your best ad right now, and then
you wouldn't be a good media buyer if you weren't at
also
least aware of
keep
what the
on looking at the
competition was doing,
competition to see
because you're not the only
what
person
kind of
running in
signals
that
you can get from
vertical.
there.
A lot of other people are constantly testing, and you are constantly testing as well. So having an eye on the changing landscape of creatives and keywords is important for any good campaign manager, no matter how good you are at making your own creatives, to have an idea of what other people are doing throughout the year, how things are changing. That's important to have that perspective.
If anyone listening has follow-up questions, we'd be super happy to hear from you. You can reach us easiest over Instagram. If you go to TheChopShop.click, you can send us a DM with requests, what you want to know. So more than welcome. But we'll be back next time with more nuggets about the arbitrage world. All right. Peace out.